everyone. Welcome today to the Nutrify Today C-Suite Summit, and I'm very happy to have you all on the panel. As you all know, that today's topic of discussion is linked to the mission of making nutraceuticals a $100 billion industry, and what role can pharma play in it. We have heard a lot of sessions when we have discussed a lot about building nutraceuticals and towards this $100 billion industry, but pharma somehow is being left out of it. And today I want to debate that how can pharma play a role in this very important opportunity which is existing. So I'm very pleased to have you all on the panel. Let's have a very quick round of introduction. On the left hand side we have Mr. Sriram Balasubramaniam, who is the director in Zuventus Pharma. Welcome Sriram, glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Mr. Vishwajit Karandikar, who is the BU head of parental nutrition in Fresenius Kabi. Vishwajit, thank you once again for being here. Welcome to the panel.
Thanks, Vikram.
So this is the pharma part, and now we're going to the OTC part. So Mr. Brijesh Kapil, ex-director PNG Health. Brijesh, very glad to have you on board. Mr. Dhaval Katkar, senior vice president, OTC and generics at Glenmark. Very pleased to have you on board once again. And Mr. Vikas Bansi, who is heading OTC for OTC business for Himalaya Wellness. He is the India business head for OTC Himalaya Wellness. So we have a very perfect blend of pharma to OTC. So let's jump right into the discussion. So my first question, Sriram, is to you. As part of pharma, where we have diverse portfolios, what do you feel are the top barriers when it comes to pharma and nutraceuticals as part of the business?
So as far as the barrier is concerned, the most important thing is the pharma mindset.
The mindset. Okay.
The pharma mindset looks at everything clinically. Okay, it believes that doctor is the center of all the business and all the prescription and all the diagnosis, and whatever he will ultimately decide in favor of a product is the one which a consumer or the patient should take. So this also is a lack of a lot of consumer research. We have a lot of pharma research, we have a lot of medical research, but when it comes to consumer research, our orientation in that particular area is very limited, because we still don't, as I told you in the beginning, that we think everything goes to the doctor, but let me tell you, the per capita spend on medicine versus the per capita spend on food and nutrition, okay, I mean, we are nowhere close to that particular area. So consumers do take decisions about their wellness, about their health, about their well-being, which as a knowledge we are devoid of, and that's one of the things. Third is, you can call it positive and you can call it negative, is the rigorous process that we take to get a product to the market.
Go on.
I mean, with the pharma mindset, we have to have standardization, we have to have the right identification, we have to have the medical rationale, we have to have a robust product development, we have to have a robust testing methodology, and after all that long breath that is there, we have people who say that okay, this should be really scientifically convincing, and then it hits the market. Also, the pharma is besieged with choosing between a lot of pharmaceutical products versus the nutraceutical products.
Right.
So they are used to having faith of launching and marketing the pharma products versus the nutra products, which is changing, no doubt, but these are the barriers which are there.
So if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you hinting towards saying that pharma will always prefer curative and preventive, and wellness will get a stepchild kind of treatment?
No, not necessarily. Look at the typical pharma industry, almost close to 1/4 of the industry's turnover comes from nutraceuticals.
Correct.
So we cannot say that we have only said therapeutic. But what we have chosen is to reach out to somebody who is elite, who is knowledgeable, and help him make the decision for the consumers or the patients. In that sense, we have not only built products around, say, just simple multivitamin and multimineral or primary nutrients. In the recent 2 decades that have gone by, there has been a recognition to reach out products which actually have not only clinical benefit but a supportive role in the therapy management which a doctor does. So we call it as co-prescriptive in our language.
Right, but evidence-backed.
But that's the mindset. That there has to be some evidence, there has to be some standardization, there should be some deliverable. Okay, that deliverable is the plus or minus, the way you see it, but it could have positives in the coming time from the pharma side.
Right. So that was very interesting. So you were telling one of the some of the barriers, like you very rightly pointed out, Sriram, that it's not that pharma has not built nutraceutical, but they have built in nutritional supplements, be it iron, folic acid, to name a few. But what you mentioned, one of the barriers is that which can be a strength as well as a barrier, to look at everything from a HCP window, and we don't do very few things on what our consumer needs are.
Absolutely.
That is one of the barriers you would say.
Absolutely.
Okay. And the long process.
And the long process. There is a long process.
That gets a barrier. Thank you so much, Sriram. We'll come back to you for some of the other questions. So, Vishwajit, you have built a business. When we're talking basically, wellness bit, you're into serious parental nutrition. So these barriers, when we're talking about going through the HCP route, so-called barriers, building evidence, how does pharma actually work on it? And what are some of the factors that it can use to build a very successful, as you always say, nutraceutical business, not necessarily nutrition business. I remember that from the last discussion.
Yeah, thanks Vikram. Also thank Nutrify to have me here on the panel discussion. Just to add to what Sriram was saying, has pharmaceutical industry done something for the nutraceutical industry? It is yes and it is no. Yes is because there are a lot of brands which have shifted from typical pharma business to OTC business. That's why it has happened. It's basically because of the backing of an HCP. I will not say a doctor per se, because it's a HCP, healthcare professional, because it can be a dietitian, it can be a trainer, or it can be a doctor, it can be a homeopath or whatever. And why no? Because has it done sufficiently? Then probably there is a lot of scope for improvement. Now, why HCP is important according to a normal person, layman, is because HCP will always look for the safety and benefit for the patient. Now, why safety is because there should not be any untoward reaction, there should not be any adverse reaction for the patient. So there need to be good trial backup for that. Now, what is benefit? Patient benefit is it should work for the patient for which it is given. That's the most important thing.
Yes.
Now, after that, why this thing is important, nutrition is important, is because if the patient is in ICU or if patient is in the hospital, and if the patient is not properly nourished, he will never ever respond to the primary line of treatment. Correct. He has to be built nutritionally. That is proven beyond doubt. Now, for that, the patient needs to be scanned for nutrition. It's not that a good looking or a normal looking patient is a well nourished patient. He may still be weak in terms of different parameters. So he needs to be scanned. There are different methods of scanning a patient. So he needs to be scanned, and let's say the patient has to be operated tomorrow, then he needs to be built nutritionally pre-op. So post-op, he starts responding in a much better way. If the patient is nutritionally depleted, he will never ever respond to the primary line, that is antibiotics, or even if he is on ventilator, he will not be weaned off from the ventilator if he is not properly nourished. So why HCPs are important are because of this.
Okay.
Then over a period of time, once the clinical benefits are being stamped and endorsed by the HCP, then I think the roads are open for OTC, or the consumer can directly purchase it from the retail shop.
Vishwajit, I'll just take one thought from what you mentioned, and we had discussed this offline also. You are marketing products which are for nutrition, not nutraceutical.
Yes.
And I remember you had in another forum you had mentioned this thing about the importance of diagnosis, that what a patient presents himself as or herself as may not actually get reflected. So my first question is, where it's, if I can call it serious nutrition, what is the in terms of diagnosis for the nutritional status, what is the penetration of that in a secondary care or tertiary care setting today?
See, if you see the statistical significance, then believe me, even in top hospitals, corporate hospitals, 50% of the patients are malnourished.
Are they diagnosed?
Yes. It is being proved, recorded and statistically proven. At least 50 to 60% in the Asian countries, they are malnourished.
And
So
yet,
there has to be a nutrition intervention.
okay. And
Whether it is enterally, whether it is parenterally or it is orally.
but there has to be an intervention.
100%.
So that's like when we come from pharma, and Sriram, you know that a lot of therapy building takes place in pharma around diagnosis, right? Whether
Correct.
it's even if we talk about iron, anemia
Supplement,
diagnosis, right? We do that. We do osteoporosis diagnosis. We do asthma diagnosis. We do diabetes diagnosis. But typically, when I see a pharma marketing mix, even for companies which are marketing nutraceuticals, we don't see diagnosis or facilitating diagnosis as a lever to drive that. But when you talk to them about the core therapy, you will see invariably in the strategy plan there will be a diagnosis which is mentioned.
Correct.
So would you attribute this to a mindset issue?
No, you see, there has been a lot of growth in terms of diagnostic tools which are available, diagnosis which is available. For example, today you can do a vitamin D3 profile.
Right.
You can do a mineral density.
BMD, yeah.
Okay. You can do iron deficiency. You can
B12.
have a lot of biomarker for cardiac events.
Correct.
So what is happening is that the parallel growth of diagnostic tools or the resources which are available, that is the one which pharma is going to adapt, because they go hand in hand. And rightly said, this is another way of making people aware, and not only the doctors but also the consumers aware.
Correct.
That there is something that they are actually ignoring, okay, and which need not even go to a stage where they need a drug, but they can do a nutritional intervention.
Absolutely. So you are saying that if one way is if pharma can spread or spearhead using their access to HCPs, as we say, Shajit, of facilitating diagnosis and of nutritional status, that would play a role in creating that kind of awareness.
Yes. To add to that, if the person or a patient is nutritionally well, then the length of stay is considerably reduced.
Yes.
Then the ventilator stay of the patient is considerably reduced, and that finally actually is the reduction of the cost, which a normal patient probably may not accept it, but it's a proven fact that the length of stay is definitely reduced.
Yes.
Cost of the treatment is ultimately reduced.
In fact, in a tertiary care setting, you would recall that we were having the discussion that one of the KPIs for your NABH accreditation, is your average length of stay, ALOS in the hospital. And it has been proven that an ALOS between, I think, 2 to 2.5 days, if maintained, has an impact on hospital profitability. If you go beyond that, then hospital profitability gets adversely compromised and impacted. So there is, what you're saying, there is, if we can...
Direct relation
to that. So even at a primary care setting, if pharma using its muscle amongst the HCPs can facilitate diagnosis and awareness, that would build credibility.
Yes.
Absolutely. Added to it, pharma spends a lot of resource and time and money on camps.
Yeah.
It's not only identification, but through the HCPs, there is an educative phase.
Correct.
Which is not fully exploited, but I'm saying it is being done, but it could be exploited more for consumer to really understand that they have certain areas where they can actually look at themselves and decide about their wellness state.
Right. In fact, when you're talking about the barriers, Sriram, I've been since I'm not attached to any company, I always see, even right from the time when, I'm not talking about the frank nutraceutical pharma companies, but typically the intent is, okay, acha product hai, we take that, we build up a certain amount of top line. Though we have examples of very, very successful brands in the, nutraceutical space, which is there. But if it's a large opportunity, I think what you mentioned, that building with evidence, you talked about getting consumer insights, looking at a bit beyond the HCP window in terms of what is the problem my brand is solving, should actually help.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you so much. Now, we're moving to the right-hand side part of it. So, the pharma to the OTC part of it. So, Brijesh, my question is always the offline discussions we've had, that if you've seen so many switches which have been from, you've taken brands from ethical pharma and you've moved to OTC, right? What role you've accelerated growth then? I mean, the brands have been at a new pinnacle of growth. What role, very dispassionately, do you think pharma played in those brands before you took them to OTC? Did pharma have a role to play?
I think, like the left or right, let me correct, like left is right as regards pharma legacy and the doctor legacy for any of these switches go. And the right part actually, like takes it and just explodes it, like beyond a point. Because one of, say, the aspects that you need to look at within nutraceutical domain is very clearly that nutraceuticals, essentially if you're talking the vitamin dietary supplements domain, versus the rest of, say, the consumer health categories or the pharma categories, which operate in a preventative, which a curative space, nutraceuticals, they actually operate in a preventative space. And for preventative space, if I were to ask you today, like, do you need a vitamin today? Your answer could be yes or no, maybe.
Maybe not.
But if I ask you, like, you need a cough syrup, there would be a very clear yes or no answer to it.
Yes.
So there is no trigger for any of, say, these nutraceutical stuff and all, so to say. So someone has to hold your hand and lead you into these brands, your vitamin dietary supplements and all, so to say. So very clearly what ends up happening, the doctor does, like that hand holding for all the brands. I would say Revital, it topped the charts in all of the Indian pharma market. It was bigger than your Mixtards and Taxems and, all the Corexes and all, like of the world. It became largest because it had a doctor legacy. And I can say that doctor's criticality is so important because I was doing brand tracks and all every 6 months on the brand. And all the market research reports said that upwards, even with Salman Khan and 40-50 crores worth of advertising money that I was pelting behind the brand, almost, like 42% of the first time usage of the brand basis brand tracks was coming on account of doctor recommendation.
Is it?
Yes. With Yuvraj 2 years and Salman Khan 2 years gone, I was on to, like the third year. And with 40-50 crores of, like advertising, first time usage of the brand, and for a marketeer, it's extremely critical. Means Dhaval and Vikas would, like bear it out. If I want to expand my brand and explode my brand track has to say what are the triggers to first time usage. So how you get new trialist onto the brand. So doctors, you would not believe that I was switched. It was, like pharma, arey tum itna advertise karte ho, why do you need, like doctor? I said, you look at this first time usage, I need to grow the brand basis. I was 90% of the market share on ginseng based rejuvenators. So you had to have, like category growth. And how you get category growth is essentially if the first time usage is 42%, television is 20%, how much can you, like grow the brand? You have to pick up the biggest pie, which is the Dr. Reco. And you would not believe for Revital, we ended up, like having a field force, which was, like med reps. And virtually when it came over, like it became very difficult to us to grow the category. With the pharma counterparts and all, we went over. They had a division called Outreach, which was going to tier 3 and below towns and all. And we mentioned that, like we need to get. So twice I took MD over to the pharma business head, and we got them to, detail the product in the interiors, while on the consumer side, I was advertising 40-50 crores with Salman, as like not a single, like magazine, not a single newspaper. And I used to, like just throw up that within 2 hours, if you don't hear or see Revital, if you're on the roads, like call me back.
Wow.
And that was the extent of advertising, but I was not leaving the hands of doctor. Doctor is extremely critical. Because it's, like source credibility. You look at most of the FMCG brands today, they make, like guys wear a lab coat, so take these Huggies, your kid will grow 2.5 inches taller because he'll sleep better, and it's a lab coat which is doing the job. And these brands, all the RX to OTC switches, the job has already been done by the doctors. So no one has to say, if a brand comes through the consumer route, it's, like you will get users on the brand, but you would get brand flirters who would come in and go. But a brand which has come through the doctor's domain as an RX to OTC switch would, like continue staying and, like you can grow it. I've done it with these brand that you handle, Neurobion was, like a 60-70 crore brand. We took up, in fact, say the 2 RX to OTC switches of brands like your Avion, Polybion, Neurobion, Livogen, etc. All these brands were RX to OTC switched, in my consumer division, and we virtually doubled the sales of these brands, and a lot of them were degrowing in the, like RX domain. So I would say there is an ideal time. You need to select the brand, when to switch. If your prescriptions start falling, plateauing or falling, and your sales continues to go on the rise, that's when you need to make a switch. And why your prescriptions plateau is because there is a better molecule which has hit the market. Suppose your joint pain was getting cured with paracetamol. You need to understand diclofenac has hit the market. Now guys are switching. If the guy who has continued treating his joint pain with paracetamol his whole lifetime, he happens to experience diclofenac, you have lost that customer forever. There is a lifetime value of the customer. So if you're not switched at the right time, you are, really an indicator of high increasing sales is indicating that there is huge self-medication. Switch the brand and then go about, exploding it, figuring it up. I've seen brands grow through advertising. I've seen brands grow through, in the COVID, I was just consulting a brand. I saw, it just forced the guy to buy Nielsen, hardcore pharma company. Buy it. What is Nielsen? What do they do? What do they tell us and all? It's the data. And the data that came over to me, within 4 hours, I gave a recommendation. The per dealer offtakes of that company was twice that of the brand leader. Brand leader was thrice their sales. I said, you need to make sure that you jack up distribution. From a 12 crore brand, the brand became 90 crores just during, 1 year's time, just correcting distribution.
Correcting the distribution.
So all that comes in later, but the doctor legacy part is, extremely critical because that provides the source credibility and no one can refute, doctor's recommendation. And if you look at, say, Volini also that I switched, my core heart of the brand was Volini #1 prescribed pain reliever.
Okay, right.
Trusted by them, trusted by the doctor, used by the doctor and used for the family and used for correcting pain and all by himself. So it's doctor is, I think, not just, in the pharma domain critical, it's critical in OTC domain, and I would say it's becoming critical in FMCG domain as well.
I'll go to
Sorry
that.
for the long answer.
No, not. I think this was again very enlightening, and I'm taking 2 points because whenever I sit with a panel like you, I'll jot down all the notes. But I love this thing about your first time usage. If that core and that pharma, the HCP maintains that 42% and which you call, that builds that. If we do go without that, this new, new segment brand flutters.
Yeah.
So there is a high churn over there, and it doesn't give that core base for you to build the brand. And Brijesh, thank you for the very candid view because you have built those brands, on Switch. And normally people say, "Kya pharma, we have built the brand," but you acknowledge that pharma.
No, pharma built the brand. I just exploded it.
Mega brand to mega brand.
Knowing the explosion areas, pretty well basis my FMCG experience. Right.
Dhaval, over to you. I mean, if I go this, what I think Brijesh was mentioning, when you're taking this brand OTC, and this whole challenge of, I don't want to use the word, but what he was mentioning, lab coat. What are the things which we should maintain, right? When you're taking a brand OTC, this legacy, how do we maintain that? How do we balance? That's a total gray area over here. And how do you take some of that legacy and infuse that OTC flavor to it?
There are 2 parts, and I would agree with what both of them said. In fact, if you look at the pharma to RX switch, what happens is any brand, when you're taking it, you have a corridor of uncertainty. Any new launch has a huge corridor of uncertainty.
Yes.
In a country like ours, out of 100 brand launch, chances are there are 95 will fail, 2 will do okay or average, 2 will be okay, and 1 or 2 will succeed, as you call it in terms of financial success. And that's the reality of life, and that's why you see so many launches, but you don't see brands sticking in your mind.
Absolutely.
And when you look at the pharma side, I think that corridor of uncertainty is passed through the pharma side with the help of a doctor. Brands become a certain size, crossing the competitive landscape and coming out when they cross a 20-30 crore turnover. That's when the brand has a strength of trials, as he was saying, doctors' confidence, and that is very, very It's an extremely important comparative advantage in a country like ours where advertising is super expensive.
It is.
Because we are a single TV household country.
Yes.
We have only one TV in the house. TV is a family time for us.
Right.
It's not like Western countries, every room has a one TV. And that doesn't happen in our case. We all sit and watch the same program. So therefore costs of advertising is 40-50 crore. That's a table stake is today $2-3 million if you want to play advertising.
Right.
So in my view, that corridor of uncertainty is essentially the foundation of a brand that comes to you as a heritage, and we acknowledge that, and therefore it is not either or. That's the first point. Second point is that even when you start OTC journey, in my view, you don't let go of the hand. Like I have many brands right now also I handle, both the sides are working in tandem. Both the field force work in tandem. The pharma guys continue to detail out, the consumer guys continue to advertise and increase sales and distribution in the larger game as he's saying. But both go hand in hand. And just because you advertise, it doesn't impact your prescription. That at least I am yet to see a...
You're endorsing
Yes, I'm saying
Even
that...
I endorse that.
I'm yet to see an example that we started advertising and prescription drop. I'm yet to see an example across 2 or 3 different categories. So it's not one category.
This is a very important point because normally we in pharma, we have the conception that if a brand is being advertised, so doctor will drop it. But okay,
it doesn't
please
drop
continue.
because see, there is something called a pen habit that the pharma team builds. We actually take advantage of that. We advertise the brand, and today also we say doctor prescribed #1 brand. That's our main focus. See, what are we doing? Essentially, we are building, when you are building brands, you are building trust, either with a doctor as they do or with a consumer. And that trust can come because of the molecule that you are detailing and the bettering of the molecule, or it can come from the doctor's heritage, that doctors prescribe brand for family or themselves using. Essentially, it's a dialogue of trust, and when that trust is built, consumers do come back again and again. Even doctors have that trust with the company and the brand, that this brand is right brand. I've been prescribing it for last 5, 7 years or 10 years, and I'm used to it. So that works very well. So it's not either or, it's in tandem, the way at least we see it. That's one part of the journey. Second part is how do you explore, like for example, when you get one brand, in pharma what happens is, brand is usually, in the industry I've seen, they have different brand names for different, what we call as different segments, okay? In consumer side, building brand is very expensive. So consumer guys tend to extend brand very fast.
Right, because they've invested a huge amount of money to it.
For example, if you take one brand, I can't keep on building a new brand name, right? Because that money is again into 2, into 3, into 4. But if you have one brand and you have, for example, we have a Candid or a Last Shield, in that brand, we can launch multiple segments. And as long as the promise is common across the thing, then it is easier to build one brand, and you can switch the consumer. You can encourage the consumer that all is skincare. If you have tried my one brand of sun care, why don't you try my skincare, moisturizers? Why don't you try my anti-acne product? But all of these are doctor side. And same thing happens on nutrition. So if you have one brand, you can take and explore that far better, reduce the cost of, because at the end of the day, it's a P&L, somebody has to run that, and we all have to ensure that there is a profitability left on the table. So you extend the brand more, but the entire foundation is the trust at the doctor first. That happens, and then consumer side accelerates the trust with the consumer directly through any form of advertising, but not letting go of doctor. I mean, we in fact, that's a source of strength in advertising, that we are #1 doctor prescribed. Otherwise, you have to end of the day show only a lab coat person, which you and me as a consumer know it's not real, because we also discount.
I think Dhawan, what again, when I'm picking these words, is the strong visualization of corridors of uncertainty. It's like an incubation. It's like the brand is being built, and can you shorten that corridor of uncertainty, or can you reduce the risk? Can you build that trust, and then you take it to the consumers on that core belief of trust?
See, what happens is when the brand comes, somebody is transferring that trust to you, and you are a trustee of that brand, right? As each of us are a trustee of the brand that we're trying to build. Our job is to ensure that that trust is not shattered in any way. You remain true to the formulation, you remain true to the promise, and you extend that promise till the time it can be extended. You just don't go left, right and center, extend the brand.
Right.
As long as it's in the area of expertise, you can extend the brand.
Right.
But you are a trustee of the brand. So if you do that well in the communication, in all form of communication, it generally works well with the consumer. Consumers do understand that.
You gave me a cue. I don't know whether I should be bringing up this topic. When you talk about the trust custodian, I would like to revert back to Brijesh on this, that a brand which is being built on certain ingredients and trust, can it be mismanaged and the trust betrayed?
Yes, I would say Revital again, it's a core example. I left the brand in 2013 in 320 crores. It was, like for a couple of months in that year, it was the largest brand in the Indian pharma market. The brand has only touched, post I left that, only 200 crores once in COVID. My 2017 target was 500 crore for the brand, and it's almost 10 years have passed. Today the brand, if I were driving it, I'm not, like making it up, it should have been, like at least 1,000 crore brand and all. For sure. The way from a 50 crore in 2006 to 320 crores, it has grown, like virtually 6 times on top line. What I'm talking is, like it had to just go thrice in 10 years time. So it would have been, like a easy. But if I look at, say, the formulation now, like, like I'm with a part of a CDMO, Amol Pharma, and Revital for women used to be manufactured at this facility. And it had 30 ingredients while Revital had only 20, and like a ginseng, and not a single batch failed here. The quantum of, say, the vitamins and minerals that the product had when I was selling it was, like the quantities were higher. The ginseng was sitting at, it was, like a 20% ginsenoside and 212 delivering 42.5 mg of ginsenoside. Today, the brand is delivering 4.25.
How much did you say?
4.25. Just 10% of what ginseng was contained. And that will give you all the answer, Vikram. So you don't have to, like scratch your head to figure up if the brand which was, like topping the charts in the Indian pharma market, like how the brand could, like plummet. And as I mentioned, like in the initial talk, means a ginseng is not ginseng. You have Korean ginseng, you have Siberian,
correct.
You have American, you have Korean Panax ginseng, you have red Korean Panax ginseng, and with a different makeup of, like ginsenosides and their fractions and all. So RGA, A1, RGB, B1, their ratios matter. If the ratios get, like toppled because of a method of extraction of ginseng, you could, like, and you get ginseng from the leaves, you get it from bark, you could get it from tap root, secondary root heads. Composition of all those would be different. And you don't know, like what is working for you, what is not working. And if it is not working, then, like you need to set it up. But if it is working, don't meddle it because you don't know a thing on it.
Absolutely.
And that is exactly what has happened to Revital.
Unfortunate.
And the brand is, like 150, 200 crores and all. It used to top the charts. It's not amongst, like top 40 at the moment.
Unfortunate.
So this is where I think, like the brand could plummet as well. So
because this is your cue. This is somewhere where I want you to, step in and say that when you're looking at all kinds of OTC, Ayurvedic, you've seen nutraceuticals, you've seen hybrid models, right? What is your take on some of the key do's and don'ts in driving this business forward?
I think the first thing is first, and I've always said this in different forums, get the balance right. And if something is working for you, like Vijay just said, don't go and push it, in a rush to get out of that corridor of uncertainty. I've seen a lot of organizations tweak too much. Talking of extensions and building on what Dhaval said, I mean, I've seen organizations which have a brand that is, detailed only for doctors because they're too scared that they might lose prescriptions. So they keep one extension for the doctor, and you have medical reps going and say, Doctor Saab, ye dekhiye, you can prescribe this because I'm advertising that. Unfortunately, in the consumer OTC space, it does not work like that, because when the consumer looks at a brand, the consumer looks at a brand holistically. You, as a marketer, you can have all the extensions that you want and believe that your consumer will fall for those extensions, and believe that your doctor would continue to be the gatekeeper because you have kept a particular extension. In reality, the idea is to get the balance right, get the communication simple, and be very, very consistent on it. Because if you're always going to be in that fear of not letting go of your prescriptions, at the same time not letting go of advertisement, or you want to accelerate too fast, in the journey what you end up doing is, over a period of time, because of again P&L or other pressures,
Naturally.
you end up choosing one over the other. So in some cases you might dilute the ingredient, you might decost it. In the other, you might just let go of your prescription, saying, okay, my prescription's plateaued anyways, so why do I require them? I think that is where most companies have got it wrong, right? The starting point is the prescription, and you can't let go of that as you build your brand, nor can you just do an artificial salutation to it by just keeping one extension and then going completely crazy on the consumer side, trying to show that your child becomes a Superman by having XYZ, but you're going to the doctor and say, no, look, I have these claims and I have these clinicals behind. It does not work like that. So I think the idea is to have that balance right, to not let go of something that gave your brand the legs in the first place. And we would always inside the boardroom debate hard and push each other. Does your brand have legs? And if it has, then how do you make the brand grow on those legs and take it forward? How much can you extend by keeping the core intact rather than trying to dilute by doing multiple variants and confuse the consumer as well as the doctor, right? So I think that for me is very, very important to do out there, right? I mean, get that balance right. In terms of don'ts, I mean, like I said, you could end up diluting what you started with in terms of formulation. You could do it in terms of your coverage, ethical coverage, trade coverage.
Messaging
does not work. Messaging, I mean, there are so many don'ts because marketing at the end of the day is all about getting your core messaging right consistently.
In fact, what he's saying, one point on that, which is the extension point that he's talking about. Extension also has to add back to the original brand.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, you're borrowing at the same time you have to deposit also.
Yes.
Because you're eating the equity on the core brand. So everything new that you do, you have to ensure that it is giving back something to the original brand.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not a symbiotic relationship and it will fail.
Right.
Over a time, it will fail. But if you're giving it back, then both grow better in the eyes of the consumer.
In fact, even in pharma space, when we're talking about, when there's so many debates we see in the companies we consult with, okay, we've launched line extensions, but the mother brand is, I'm not talking about the switch part of it, I'm talking about the Frank HCP. When I said that this is the old brand and all that, then if it's an old brand, then why are you keeping that extension?
Exactly.
Correct. Absolutely.
Then don't do it. That name has to be an asset. It cannot be a liability.
Absolutely.
Right, and that's interesting. And just tell me one more thing, Vikas. On this, when you're talking about messaging, and this is open to everyone. Thanks to Nutrify also, we've got exposed to the nutraceuticals. We've seen this in pharma. Today, one of the panelists was talking. Why are we so hell-bent on ingredient communication, and why not benefit-oriented communication? It's happening in nutraceuticals also, it happens in pharma also. हम देखते हैं कि the brand has this, we promote the ingredient, we promote this additive. Why is benefit orientation not implemented?
I'll take that. I mean, there are two aspects to it. One is the regulatory and the science aspect. When you pitch on ingredients, you kind of are protected in a way that you don't have to do clinicals. You can stick to your ingredient-led claims or benefits. When you want to call out benefit and attribute it to a brand that you're going to market,
right,
the process or the regulatory aspect of it in terms of having clinicals or trials is far more rigorous than what you would possibly need on only sticking to ingredients. So that is the technical part of it. The non-technical part of it is, I think as marketers, and I'm as much guilty, we all want to stick to something which is already available. I mean, courtesy Google Baba or courtesy so many other things. Why, if a manufacturer or a CDMO or someone comes and tells you, look, this is what I have, and this kind of reduces your time to market by say 6 months or 12 months versus something that you may have to test, try, and then go ahead and hit the market. I think most marketers unfortunately take the lazy route out, saying if I have something which is available, why not build a fancy label around it? Why not have it differentiated via packaging? Why do the job which is far more tedious with a probability of success that it may or may not get the regulator's nod? So I mean those are the two aspects. One is the technical part of it, the other is the behavioral part of it, which kind of makes most of the marketers, lazy. No offense.
That's very candidly put. What's your take on this?
One more angle which is there is that when you actually, now we're in the digital era, we are looking at how consumers actually search. So we've done a lot of try to deep drill on it and see whether consumers searching for problems or what are they searching for. What really happens is that the ingredients also become brands in a manner. So people are actually searching more for curcumin than the problem that they want to solve. So somewhere they've already fixed that curcumin is something that I want to understand about. So the volume of search, when you look at it, it makes the marketer feel that this volume is attractive enough for me to really place it around that and build a brand around that. Okay. And then comes the benefit advantage because it is borrowing from this particular habit of the consumers. That's what is also.
But the biggest risk associated with ingredient-based marketing is, again, as we talked in, say, the initial bit, that an ingredient means, like the rigor with which a company with, known legacy comes out with, like an ingredient which is likes of, like a DMF, which is, like standardized and would deliver like the same extract. Ginseng, multiple brands came, nobody, could make, like any dent because they thought ginseng is ginseng. Who is giving you the cheapest ginseng? Chinese, okay, let's get in, pack in, kitna hai Revital mein, let me add that up. Ingredient based marketing is, like a huge issue. It's, easier to communicate to the consumer because the consumer will see, okay, ye ingredient hai, I have Googled basis the ingredient and these are the top 10 brands and all in that and he'll go and buy it. But the issue is you are making yourself naked in front of the whole world competition who can, just mime you, throw up a better price and, lick you out of the market. So very clearly a benefit based, marketing of nutraceuticals would be far superior, but it's a long drawn, process. Like a curative, you say this is the ailment, if you suffer fever, take paracetamol, you're sorted. But like for vitamin, if you say, means if you have anemia, if you have this, if you that, no one's going to test for anemia. But you say भागदौड़ भर जिंदगी ये थकना मना है इसलिए खाने के लिए साथ चाहिए एक्स्ट्रा इसलिए रिवाइटल रोजाना खत्म यार ऐड 5 मिनट के वीडियो रोल पे मतलब कि इट्स ओवर सो मीन्स बट इट टेक्स इतनी सारी रिसर्चेस के बाद भी ये आता था कि रेलेवेंस ऑफ द ब्रांड कंज्यूमर वेर नॉट इन अ पोजिशन टू फिगर हाउ डज दिस ब्रांड सॉर्ट माई प्रॉब्लम थकना मना है तो थकते तो है ही मतलब आप पैदल जा रहे हो खेल के आ रहे हो कपड़े धो रहे हो बच्चों को खिला रहे हो तो थकोगे तो है ही सो व्हाट्स द बिग डील बट इट टेक्स लॉन्ग जेस्टेशन एंड ह्यूज मनीज एंड पेशेंस for the companies to build it up. So
unless it's like a core benefit what you were talking Vishwajit that that it is reducing length of stay, it is your recovery is directly impacted on it. Absolutely. And you're building on evidence on that.
Actually because you can see the results immediately.
That's
here it's all relative. I am feeling better with one product, I am not so good with other product, more of a psychology. But here it is either black or white.
There's a number attached to it. There's a number
attached to it.
No, and parenterals, you give it to the guy wakes up actually means, like so.
It's medical nutrition.
It's medical nutrition.
One, example I would like to give about their company because I have seen, Himalaya from when I started as a medical rep and started working. So many of the brands were built, though they used to, market the product scientifically with their clinical data also. As a Ayurvedic company, they were still clinical.
Yes, they had a very strong doctor.
But they had a very interesting modus in terms of actually picking up data from the doctors and republishing the same data back to doctors, saying that this is the satisfaction index or this is the benefit that they had found in the product, collect it and go back to them again and say so many doctors have actually reported this. So when you talk about ingredient marketing, you can always convert it into based on how much more effort you're trying to bring about the benefits through consumer experience.
You told about this, and is it this today what pharma is also doing? They take the opinion and the benefit orientation. They take the feedback from doctors and they publish it. In terms of assessment. As usual, time always flies when you have a panel like this. And to sum it up, I think any business head who is there or the CX of a company who's having pharma and nutrition, I think one thing is coming very clear that yes, pharma has a role. How does pharma have a role? Pharma has a role if it can give that credibility, if it can facilitate diagnosis, if it can build evidence, because that is the source of trust. I think what you were mentioning, with tangible benefits, which actually creates a nucleus, and then you can unlock that value.
Yeah.
Without compromising on the credibility and making sure that what you mentioned, the corridor of uncertainty and that maintaining that balance is that just because my brand has gone OTC, I'm not cutting the roots of where I came from. I'm not eroding that trust what it has been built on. So as a pure businessman owner, yes, if I'm getting a nutraceutical branded pharma, I would tell the nutraceutical, the team handling it, that you better unlock the value, you better give it all justice, seed the market, facilitate diagnosis, educate the customers, because there is value to be unlocked.
True.
They should not, be very blind towards it. And if one arm of the company can create the credibility and the other, as you said, can explode it, why not? And I think it's high time if these learnings can be taken. This 100 billion nutraceutical market, pharma can play a very, very critical role in building that over here. So, Sriram, Vishwajit, Brijesh, Dhaval, Vikas, thanks a ton for being there. I always learn something online and offline from each one of you, and it's always been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much, Nutrify C-Suite Summit, for giving us this opportunity to discuss.
Vikram.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Vikram.
Thank you.
Nutrify.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks.